keep it alive through these lines I write. I keep it live cause I thrive. I might just blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped, but it's no hype. From this height, it's direct hits on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here, holding these days hostage. And I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love, and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares. Nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling them flares. They can't catch it, it's havoc. I rip to a tear, switch the scenario. My stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away. Asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it, so explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it, no scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool, hear my heartbeat, beat into the vocals. I'm so loco, lost my mind, oh no. It's ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones, bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in, full time to the 10. I'm on my clock, like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursuing.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anti-Media Radio. Once again with your host Nick Burnaby here on UCY.TV. Thank you for tuning in. Also joined by my co-host DB Schwartz. How you doing, bro? Hey brother, you there? Okay, we may be having some connectivity problems here with DB.
Can you hear me, man?
Hey, you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're on.
All right, cool, man. Yeah, dude, I'm just looking at this repeat from 5 years ago with this Fort Hood shit. And this time it's now a wounded veteran who, you know, he was a PTSD guy and he just went completely uncorked. Had an argument with another guy, and looks like it's what is called the 1st Battalion. It's the Wounded Warriors Brigade, where they go to heal and they kind of stay on base and stay with their brothers, but don't get involved in stuff because they're unhinged, dude. This guy Lopez. So, you know, he came back from fighting overseas and he couldn't get it out of him, man. And you know, he just probably went nuts.
Now, it seems like Monday we kind of, in a way, predicted this thing. We talked about it, about how these guys on these bases, for some reason or another, ever since Clinton signed the executive order in the 90s, are basically the troops on the base are unarmed. They're disarmed, more or less. And just like we saw with this Navy shooter guy, which we all know was kind of weird, the guy, no one could put him down because there's not really anybody armed unless you're an MP, unless you're a cop on base.
Right. And you know what? At least back in the day, just for posterity, the officers had firearms. They had sidearms, okay? If even one officer had a sidearm in this case, would the guy have gotten return fire? Absolutely he would have gotten return fire. You can't put the guys that are in charge of protecting our country in sitting ducks when they're supposed to be secure on their bases.
Yeah, it just doesn't make any sense. And like we talked about on Monday, it's because the government is scared of our own troops. Yeah, they give the guys out in Iraq that are, and Afghanistan and in Korea, yeah, they have guns. But when they're back home, no, they don't want them having guns because they know that that's the first line of defense if the government goes into this full out, you know, tyranny mode.
Right. And you know what? They should be scared. You know, they when Leon Panetta went over to Iraq, they had to disarm everyone on the base for this guy, okay? They should be scared. Because the military is figuring out real quick, they're going to be phased out with drones. Not just the Air Force. This is coming to the Navy and the Army too. And once this is done, who's to stop whoever controls the government from doing whatever they want? The only time is now. The precipice is going to pass soon where the advantage is over and the human element is now at a disadvantage. and we have to fight robots. Except it's not going to be like Terminator where the robots are trying to destroy all of humanity. It's going to be the very top echelon telling the robots to destroy all the lower levels of humanity.
And that's why it's so sensitive, man, because we're getting to a point where military forces are becoming autonomous. There's not going to be that many guys left. If you look
foot soldier is almost obsolete at this point. I think the way that the U.S. is approaching Russia and China, who have massive conventional militaries but little in the way of drones, that they're not scared of them. They're literally going to split the world in half and take over everything that's not Russia and China with this drone army.
And I mean, I think they're already pretty much doing it. How many countries are we in? Over 100 countries or something like that? And
everything not Russia and China. Cause I looked around and I saw how the string of pearls, which is basically this strategy to surround China and kind of encapsulate it, has taken effect all around the world, all around Russia and China, because they're our only threats. They're the only countries in the world that could possibly attack us.
And, I guess that's kind of what we're seeing now with Ukraine, and these tensions are kind of escalating. Thankfully, Russia hasn't gone and invaded the rest of Ukraine yet, or, started anything crazy. I don't think Russia wants to get in that. They just want to make sure that they're keeping their assets safe, and unfortunately, the average Ukrainian is going to be exploited by the East and the West in this proxy war for resources, which, in my opinion, is so Orwellian-like. It's so 1984, where they just have these perpetual wars going, where it just takes the resources out of the home economy. So you just transfer resources out, so everyone's got to keep spinning the wheels in this hamster wheel in the rat race, and no one can ever get ahead, and then no one can ever have the time to take some time and actually think about what's happening to us. So I think it's all by design. They want these perpetual wars to just keep going. Not only are they making people rich, but it's keeping us dumb, I think.
Well, I mean, isn't that the entire point? We're looking at how Indiana today just rejected Common Core. But the institutionalized dumbing down of all of society, it's not just elementary and high school. Go to a college class. See the quality of students that are in our colleges now. They are pitiful. I'm sorry, but we have people that have no right to be in college. They should be doing a blue collar job, but there are none. They've all been shipped out. So these people get into this mindset and this trap. It's either McDonald's life for them, or they go to school and rack up massive debt and get a degree in something a million other people have, and they're not that bright to begin with. We need to allow people to follow their passions. This is why we're so far behind. The institutionalized dumbing down is complete.
1 second, we're getting a call coming in. Let's see who this is. Hey, how's it going? You're on the Anti-Media Radio. What do you want to talk about?
What's going on, man? It's James Impending from NWO Truth Radio. How you doing tonight?
Pretty good. How about you?
Doing all right, brother. Yeah, I was just calling in to, more than anything, try and see what you were talking about.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, we're just getting into it here. We were talking about this Fort Hood shooting, and now there's another breaking story going on. Apparently there's a shooter at Kent State as well. I don't know if you heard about that yet, DB, but
are we living through is history repeating itself? Like, are we in a time warp here? This shit happened in the 60s, did it not?
Kent State, I believe, is where all those students were shot by the
National
government.
Guard.
Yeah.
So what? This is just these coincidences are just mind-boggling at this point.
Yeah, if you guys want to check it out on the Anti-Media, we have a live embedded tweet feed there on the antimedia.org. You can go check it out, and you can get all the live tweets. Most of it's coming from students within the school, so it's pretty accurate reporting. It's not the CNN stuff where they're making up a bunch of conspiracy theories. You could actually see pictures of the cops. Apparently, most of the school is cleared out, but there was definitely reports of shot fired. I don't know if anyone's been hurt or killed or whatever. But once again, it's at these schools where they have these gun-free zones where these kids can't defend themselves and the teachers can't defend the kids.
Well, think about it. Fort Hood got hit. That's a gun-free zone, ironically enough. And now another school gun-free zone. This is just, it's rubbing it in the faces right now of the people that really hold their freedoms dearly.
It's just,
you're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's getting out of control, man. And then the only thing that we're going to see out of this is more gun control. Hey, we need more gun control. We need more this. We need more that. No one talks about the real problem. No one talks about the people actually being able to defend themselves. In most of these places, they just can't. They're just, all they can do is be victims and wait. Hopefully the cops come, and hopefully the cops don't shoot somebody innocent, because that's more likely what they're going to do.
I agree with you 100%, brother.
So,
and they never really talk about the fact that they set these things up so that they can come and do all these gun grabs.
Oh, definitely, man. And whether they're premeditated or not, let's look at Sandy Hook and what they did there. I mean, it was a totally concerted effort by the media to totally try to go after gun rights. You even had that guy from the NFL, what's his name? Bob Costas or whatever, coming out for gun control and stuff. I mean, it's crazy, you know. And you know that the players aren't for gun control. You know that all those NFL players have guns.
Oh yeah, shoot themselves once in a while.
Yeah. And it's like the elite. It's Feinstein, who has armed guards and reportedly has her own concealed carry permit, trying to tell us peons that, oh no, you guys can't have guns. But we can, because we need the guns to defend from you guys, because you guys are the bad ones, not us, even though they're the ones breaking the laws, the biggest laws of the land. They're the ones stepping on freedom of speech. They're the ones peeing on the Fourth Amendment, not us. Yeah, what do we do? We get speeding tickets. I got caught smoking weed at Sacramento. Big deal. These guys are breaking the fundamental laws of our society, and what do? They take our guns away as punishment. Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Well, they can't get the agenda through if everyone's armed, man. That's what everyone knows. They can't start carving up this country if everybody's armed.
Oh yeah, and we outnumber them 100 to 1 right now as far as armed versus they're armed. You're absolutely right, though. The definition of slavery is an unarmed populace.
And then they have the gall to come after the freedom of speech that we have. And there's this big story coming out of Australia today that I want to jump into, because in my opinion it's kind of a prequel to the Trans-Pacific Partnership. But apparently Australia's government is considering making it illegal to boycott a company for environmental or consumer protection reasons. So Australia is basically getting ready to say, look, you can't boycott or single out a company, because basically you're going to hurt their bottom line, so we're going to go ahead and ban that. Because I guess in Australia they have a bunch of highly effective environmental groups that are trying to protect these native forests out in Tasmania and things like that, and the overfishing industry and all that stuff.
Well, now they're trying to protect the dingo over there. There's a big thing going on right now about protecting the dingo, and I think it's like 56,000 people that are over there doing this right now.
And it's like, this thing is just going directly in the face of freedom of speech. If you're not allowed to boycott somebody, then what are they going to do? Force you to buy it? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Is it like a giant version of Obamacare coming to Australia?
Hey, all these things they're making are logically inconsistent. Like, when you make a protest illegal, what are you going to do? Arrest 10,000 people? What are you going to do? Force me to buy a company? I mean, there's nothing they can do in this case. This is just ridiculous.
Well, the Hebrews couldn't protest the Egyptians either, so I mean, when you think about it, it's all pushing towards slavery. And you have to worship the man who stands there with the whip so that he doesn't kill you.
Now that kind of we're gonna get a caller in later, about 1:30, from Albuquerque to talk about what's going on down there with these police. The third guy just got shot. This is the third guy in 3 weeks that were shot by authorities in Albuquerque. I guess this guy was shot by U.S. Marshals. There were 2 men shot and killed by.
And he was handcuffed, Nick. Don't forget that.
Well, I think they handcuffed him after they shot him.
No. That's logically inconsistent. He was handcuffed. Even if he did try to make a move to get away, you don't cap someone in the head. I'm sorry.
And then last week there was another guy that got shot. The police came out and they were like, "Oh yeah, he took the first shot. He shot at us first." The guy's family the whole time was like, "No, there's no way. He was holding a cell phone. He wasn't holding a gun. There's no way he shot at you." And anyway, the police released a story to the media. Of course, the media took it hook, line, and sinker, despite what the family was saying. And then it turns out that the neighbor across the street was videotaping the whole incident, and the videotape kind of goes along with the family story that the guy was actually holding a cell phone, not a gun, because he didn't take the first shot. He just got shot. So we're gonna have a guy calling in about 15 minutes or so, and to talk about that.
Well, Nick, what's the story about this guy who was shot having sex in the apartments by the cops?
Oh yeah, that's another one, man. I mean, it's like these.
Don't call the cops if you don't want people killed. Literally.
Exactly, man.
They're revenue enforcers, like you were saying. We get tickets and we get fined and we get all this and we get that. And the police aren't here to protect us. They're here to enforce their outrageous tax plan. They're revenue enforcers is exactly what they are. They go out and make the city or county money.
It's just a big corporation, and they're the henchmen, basically. You know,
exactly right.
It's just getting so out of hand. I mean, there's this guy now. He was having sex in his apartment's swimming pool, and a cop came off duty. Don't forget, this guy was off duty, and he said, "Hey, get the hell out of here! You can't be doing that in here." And the guy's all right, you know. And then the guy comes back. A while later, half an hour later, and then the guy's all he's doing is sitting there he's sitting in like a lounge chair at the pool. He's like, "Hey man, I told you to get the hell out of here," and it escalated, and then the guy ended up getting shot. You know, and then now we got this other story coming out. I just found it today. I don't know exactly when it's from, but apparently there was 11-year-old kid gets a gun pulled on him by the cops because him and his buddies were building a treehouse in Georgia. It just doesn't make any sense, dude. This stuff is like escalating out of hand, and it's really is time for us to do something about it now before it's too late.
You know, they don't employ the smart police officers. They won't take anybody who comes from Iraq or Afghanistan and put them on a police force because they actually know about the Constitution and what it means to enforce it. What they do is they go out and they get the D minuses, and they tell them, look, and I really have experience here because I was on the sheriff's department here where I live, but they go get these D minus cops, and they bring them into the office and they tell them, look, you know, you didn't really score high enough, and but I like you, and remember I did this for you. One day I'm going to call on you. I may need you. Just remember I did this. You know, you owe me now. So you do what I say. You enforce the rules that I give, and you don't question it. And the worst word you can hear as a civilian is, "Ma'am, sir, I'm only doing my job."
There's another video. I mean, this stuff is like never ending, and I found this video today on Facebook. A kid uploaded it from his Facebook page on his profile, and apparently he was the one that was at the house taking this video. And it just shows a cop entering into this guy's house, and the guy was like not wanting to let the cop in, and he's like, "Sir, why are you coming into my house?" And then the guy's just like, "You're under arrest," and he's like, "Sir, why am I being arrested?" He's like, "I'm scared right now." He's like, "You're coming into my house and you're trying to arrest me, and you're not telling me why." And then the guy takes him on the couch, starts wrestling with him, and then the guy's just keeps repeating himself, "Why am I being arrested? Why are you arresting me?" And then the only thing the cop said, "You're being arrested for resisting me." It's like, how do you get arrested for not wanting to be arrested? It doesn't make any sense. And then the video gets pulled down. I'm getting ready to embed the video. I was going to write an article about it. I'm getting ready to embed this video on the anti-media. And then I go back on Facebook to embed it, and the video's gone. It's taken down. And then luckily, see, I don't know, I'm not that technically advanced, but somebody was able to download the video from Facebook and put it on YouTube, so it's still saved. And I'll put that up on the anti-media tomorrow for you guys to check out. But it's just like these stories don't stop. And then, what's happening in Albuquerque now is basically a mirror of what happened in Anaheim a year or two ago when the cops started shooting all these people that were unarmed, and then the people started standing up. The people in Anaheim started standing up, and then what did they do? They responded with a full-on, literally in fatigues, a full-on militarized riot force that were shooting rubber bullets at kids and stuff like that. So it's like, okay, well, we're just going to be above the law. When anyone ever wants to stand up to us being above the law, we're just going to respond with massive brute force. And that's something that we need to keep in mind, and we need to remember that in the future as these things start to evolve and as these things start to get worse and as we start to get more organized. We got to remember that we can use that massive brute force and make it backfire against them. We just got to figure out how.
Well, Stalin said, that it's the nail that sticks up that gets hammered down, and I think that's where we're at now, trying to switch from what, was a false democracy anyway into what it has been and still is, a socialist, communist, Marxist government. Instead of hiding it now, they want to implement it.
Yes, they want to implement it, but the thing is that anybody with half a brain is going to know it's failed every single time it's been tried. It would never work in a country of this size. It doesn't work in China. China's on the verge of having another, probably their 10th or I don't know how many civil war. No one knows that, but they are. So it can't work.
It's been tried too many times and failed. And it's just the natural cycle of any empire, really. An empire is going to have its golden years, which we came and went in the 50s, and now all we have now is just this end of this empire cycle where we're just going to have a bunch of chaos, and then you're going to have the elite fighting the elite, and then the poor people are going to get the short end of the stick. We're going to get the hyperinflation. We're going to get the ration food. Another story I forgot to put in our notes. Venezuela is starting to issue ID cards to control the flow of food because they are saying that people are hoarding food. You know that there's these staple shortages in Venezuela due to this communist dictator economy, basically, where they ration all the foods, they control all the wages, they control all the prices, they control all the production, and they're having shortages of the basic staples. The cereal, the milk, the toilet paper, things like that. So now they're blaming, instead of realizing that it's the government's fault for trying to control the economy, they're saying, oh, well, it's your guys' fault, so now you guys have to have these ID cards so that we can make sure you're not hoarding food anymore. Because it's the reason why everybody's having such a bad time is because there's a few people hoarding food, and that's what's going on. Now, if you remember back in the 1930s, that's the exact same line that they used to confiscate all the gold in the United States. Oh, everybody's hoarding gold, so we're going to have everybody turn it into the Federal Reserve. How did that work out for us?
Now, can we talk about how brother. Can we talk about what may be on the verge of happening that could implement something like that even here, which is freaking Yellowstone supervolcano?
Oh, yeah. All you need is a major event, and it can be, like you said, natural or economic. And it doesn't take, I hate to even quote the movie, but, to push us over the edge is very, very easy to do at this point in time.
It is, because we're teetering on the brink. We're hanging by a wire, and I'm looking at this volcano expected eruption pattern. It's going to knock out, get this, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, Missouri for food production. That's where about half of the grains in the country come from. So.
Yeah.
And there are animals fleeing Wyoming right now as we speak.
Well, you know what? And that's a major sign. When the animals start to leave, there's something wrong. And that goes for domestic animals. If there's a bad storm, my dog freaks out. If it's just rain, he'll lay down and go to sleep. But, animals seem to know when something bad's going to happen a little bit before we do.
I think if humans weren't so clogged up with all this rat race stuff, we'd probably have some kind of sense of it coming too. And I think some people probably do sense it coming. And we talked about, in fact, on Monday, we talked about how people on the West Coast, or on any coast really, should be prepared for a tsunami coming because there could be seismic activity at any time. And we saw this huge earthquake just hit off the coast of Chile, 8.2 earthquake, it caused a tsunami in Chile, which wiped out some coastal villages. Not so bad of a tsunami, but the quake caused some major damage down there. Dropped a bunch of bridges, a bunch of buildings fell over, a bunch of infrastructure got destroyed.
Right. There was supposedly now, I haven't confirmed this, but I did get an update that they had a 7.4 hit, maybe it was sometime tonight in the same place.
Wow. Yeah, that's like an aftershock, and that's huge.
I think it's obvious that crustal shift is imminent, and if the crust is shifting, it's going to release all the pressure, and something is going to go. And those bison are running, man. They're running down the freeway at 40 miles an hour. So
they're getting the hell out of Dodge.
Let's just hope that it's not Yellowstone, because that would just be absolutely disastrous for the whole world, because that's just the huge, I think it's the biggest volcano in the world, it's a
super volcano. It's the biggest one in the world that's not underwater. And the problem is that it knocks out our food production. And we export more food than you could possibly imagine. We actually probably feed about half of the world in a lot of ways. So if that knocks out those 5 states and then it cuts production, we're going to barely feed ourselves. We'll probably have a real hungry year here if that happens. And other countries will be fighting for anything they can get.
Well, if it carries the dust cloud eastward, then farmland in California is going to be very, very, very valuable, it seems like to me.
Well, the ash cloud actually will come over to us, Nick. You remember when we had those fires here and the sky was red? It'll be like that for around 6 months, right here.
Wow, that's insane, man.
Yep.
So now, I talked on Monday about being prepared to just have an evac plan for getting out of the way of a tsunami if you're in a coastal zone that's low lying. And, sure enough, there was a little tsunami that hit the West Coast. It was tiny, albeit, but let's remember that this earthquake was all the way down in Chile. So in San Diego here, we got a 2-inch tsunami. In Santa Monica, which was the biggest hit in California, they got a 6.3-inch tsunami. And yeah, it's small, but just remember, this earthquake, this tsunami, was created thousands and thousands of miles away basically on the other side of the earth. So if one hits off the coast of the west coast of the United States, everybody's got to have a plan to get out of the way of this thing, whether it's to climb into a building, whether it's to get to higher ground.
Well, isn't Chile just destroyed?
Yeah, there was a lot of structural damage. We just posted a picture of some of the damage on the Anti-Media Facebook page. You guys can go check it out. But yeah, there was huge bridges that went down, whole buildings that are just on their sides. Yeah, it's pretty bad. A lot of people had to be evacuated. A lot of people are basically living in schools now, living in auditoriums. So, Chile, and the other thing about Chile is that they actually have really good infrastructure. That most of their infrastructure is retrofitted for earthquakes.
Yep.
So it's not like Haiti where everything just falls down. They actually have good infrastructure. So if this stuff is getting knocked down there, it was a pretty powerful quake.
You were talking about tsunamis, and I don't think it was too terribly long ago, 3 or 4 months ago, that Great Britain got hit with like a 35-foot wave.
Oh, that's crazy. I didn't hear about that. No, what happened?
There was some kind of earthquake somewhere. I don't remember exactly where, and but it couldn't have been terribly far away. But they had a wave come up and hit the coast of Great Britain that was 35 feet in size, and it didn't come on the news here. I actually found it on an alternative media site. I don't remember which one it is, but I've got all this stuff bookmarked. My wife is doing her homework at this point in time. It's the only reason I can't get to my stuff. But it was a 35-foot wave. They said that it could, they were expecting, somewhere between 10 and 15 feet. It didn't do a whole bunch of damage. It broke some foundations loose and did some damage, but it wasn't anything major. I don't believe anybody drowned.
And I think,
That's a big wave.
Now, England is also better. I believe they're better prepared than we are because being that they're right on the coast of Europe, they're prepared for these big storms that come through. They've been getting hit with those for forever, so they've got these big storm walls and they've got a little more protection than we do. But here on the West Coast, as far as I've seen down here, we don't really have any type of wave break. We don't have any type of storm surge protection because we don't really get hit with hurricanes or anything like that. So, it's really vulnerable here on the West Coast. If a tsunami came in, it would just wash right through.
Yeah, and the funny thing is the Border Patrol station when you're going over to Nevada and Arizona, those are being built up to keep people in when something hits here. This is a well-known secret that this is an area where they know there's so many damn people that if something happens here, they're just going to box everyone in because the rest of the country can't handle it. I don't know if you know that, Nick, but
that's amazing.
That was a plan done many, many years ago.
So we got all this stuff going on today, as well as this Supreme Court decision that basically struck down the limits on political campaign contributions, which I don't know where to go with this thing. Apparently, it's kind of like Citizens United. There was a cap of $100 and something thousand for every 2 years, I guess, that you can give to any given politician or political action committee or whatever they're called. And now it's basically unlimited. So it just goes to show that freedom of speech is kind of relative, So if you're broke, apparently your voice isn't really as it's not heard as much as someone who's rich, because someone who's rich can, in the form of a bunch of money, which is considered speech in this country, can influence these elections. And unfortunately for someone like us that don't have that much money, our voice isn't going to be heard that much. Hold on. I think the guy from Albuquerque is calling in. I'm going to add him to this call. Hey, how's it going? You're on the Anti-Media Radio. Who's this?
Hey, how's it going? This is Kyle from Albuquerque.
Hey, Kyle, how's it going, man? Yeah, we wanted to bring you on to see if you can give us a little on-the-ground insight of what's going on in Albuquerque. We know there's been 3 unarmed men shot in the past 3 weeks, and there was these huge protests in Albuquerque over the weekend on Sunday, and some other things going on. Give us a little lowdown about what's going on there.
Yeah, basically, this whole thing has been going on for many years. A lot of people really didn't know about it until recently, due to social media and everything. The videos and the stories are getting out now, and it's really good to finally get the recognition on this sort of thing. The police have been killing innocent people here for years now, and we've all pretty much been affected by it. And the people have finally had enough, man. They're starting to stand up for what's right.
Yeah, it seems like I looked at some statistics, and there's some staggering numbers, and it's weird that we don't really hear about much news coming out of Albuquerque, apparently because the mainstream media doesn't really like to cover anything that's not on the East or West Coast. But apparently in Albuquerque, there's been something like, 24 or 30 killings in the past 12 years by the police, and it's just like this police state just keeps creeping and creeping and creeping in. And we're starting to see people in Albuquerque just get tired of it. And they took to the streets. What is the general feeling going around there and attitude towards the cops?
It's really been pretty negative for the longest time now. But like I said, now that, these stories are coming out to the light and more people are seeing them, really they're realizing that they're not alone in this sort of thing. I know all of us, or most of us here, have family members or, individuals close to us that we know that have been harassed by the police for years. And I don't know if you guys know this, but our police have actually killed more people here since 2010 than the NYPD. And the NYPD is, or obviously New York City is a city about 16 times bigger than ours.
Wow.
And really the militarization of the police here is the problem. And a lot of times we don't know that they're the police. A lot of unmarked cars, a lot of unmarked officers. It seems like jeans and t-shirt and a flak jacket is the new uniform for the APD out here. And it's kind of ridiculous because, you don't know if you're being held up by a gang member or if you're being held up by a police officer. And people are just tired of it. And, we all took to the streets last Sunday, and, there were some people that did some things that, weren't really going along with the peaceful protest. And it's really out of frustration. I mean, frustration of, watching their family members get tortured under interrogation, things like that. And really the police, I had a chance to speak with one of the officers down on the ground on Sunday when we were doing the protests. I mean, most of them were told not to talk to any of the protesters, but I kind of went away from the protest, saw a street cop out there and was asking him some questions. And really he was saying that honestly, due to so many lawsuits from people out here, that a lot of the police officers are figuring, I might as well kill somebody and get a day off than, have the department lose hundreds of thousands of dollars and perhaps, a lot of their funding.
That's insane, and I wish somebody could record that, and this is why we need to have cameras on all these guys and make anything they do that happens off camera completely on them and hold them personally liable.
Yeah, and that's happening more and more now, especially with, like I said, social media and with the way technology is now. A lot more people are turning their cameras on these police officers, and and not all of them are in the wrong. Not all of them are really going against the people here. A lot of them really love this city, and it's really just sad to see, the mob mentality take over with these police officers to where, we don't know who's a cop and who's a gang member anymore. And I don't know if you saw some of the video from yesterday. I know you sent me a link on it, and I was actually taking a look into more of that. But another gentleman was shot, and he wasn't killed, but he was definitely seriously injured. He was shot in the head. And from all the eyewitness accounts, he was basically had his hands on the wheel, looking straight ahead, and they shot him, and he was leaving a methadone clinic. And that's the way they kind of get away with these things. They say, oh, they got a criminal background, so or they're a homeless person, so nobody really cares about them. But the fact of the matter is, these people have families, people have friends, and we're all not taking it anymore. We're standing up for our rights.
Yeah, and a lot of these guys that do have criminal records, a lot of them end up initially going into crime with nonviolent or victimless crimes, drug sales, things like that. Then they go into prison, they get institutionalized, they become violent, they gain more connections. I talked to a guy the other day that was telling me that he gained more connections when he was in jail than anywhere else. And then when he got out, that just made his criminal enterprise even easier to pull off. I mean, what they're doing is they're basically criminalizing everybody. I got a ticket the other day in Sacramento for smoking a little bit of weed, and the cops knew that what they were doing was wrong. I could tell they knew what they were doing was wrong. They were like, hey, well, if you had your med card, we would have let you off, but we're going to go ahead and give you a ticket. I'm like, look, you guys want to give me a ticket? This stuff shouldn't be illegal. It's immoral, but go ahead, give me your ticket. I don't care. But I'm lucky to be in California where that kind of stuff, you just get away with a slap on the wrist. Now, if I was in another state where that's treated a lot stricter, I could have ended up in jail over smoking a little joint. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and it just seems to be getting worse and worse out here. The militarization of the police, like I said before, is just out of hand. We're seeing more and more SWAT teams in full, BDUs. They pretty much just look like they came right out of Iraq, and they're rolling down our streets.
Yeah.
And, it's getting bad, and we just, enough is enough. People have had enough, and I know this Sunday they're planning to have a pro-APD protest, so people who support the police are supposed to be coming out, and, I really just worry that might escalate too, and that it might get violent out there, but we're hoping that doesn't happen.
I hope that gets live streamed because I hope it remains peaceful, and I hope like 5 people show up.
Yeah.
You really gonna protest? They're really gonna protest in favor of a bunch of killer cops? That's insane.
Yeah, and really, that protest seems to be. It's funny because if you look at the different protests and just the amount of followers, like on Facebook, the pro-police protest has maybe like 100 followers, whereas the anti-police protest has something like, I don't know, like 10 or 15,000 followers. So, I mean, it's obvious where the numbers are at. And, And the sad part is that they're really just picking on the innocent at this point, or I shouldn't really say innocent, but what they consider to be weak. Homeless, people leaving methadone clinics that have these criminal pasts that are trying to, turn their lives around and do the right thing. And they're just getting confronted at every corner by these police that just seem to be targeting them specifically. And it's just sad because they know that they can get away with murder of these people. And that's really what we're all standing up against and standing up for, is just the fact that you can't murder innocent people in our town anymore, and we're just not going to take it.
Well, for the longest time, they had the support of these sheeple, which are these guys that are going to show up at this pro-APD rally that's going to be going on Sunday. And then they also probably had the cover by the mainstream media, the local media. But like you said earlier, thanks to social media and thanks to these videos coming out and going viral, it's pushed this story into the mainstream. I can't remember the last time I heard Albuquerque in the national news, but I saw this story was actually covered on the Washington Post as well. But that just shows the pattern that we've been seeing emerging, coming from the independent and the social media, is that the real stories actually surface on the social media first, and then the independent media covers it, and then the mainstream media is forced to, they basically have to say, oh well, I guess we have to cover this thing. It went viral on Reddit or whatever, and then they finally have to show, oh damn, there's people that are actually standing up to these killer cops. And now in Albuquerque, there was you mentioned earlier that there was some disruption to the peaceful protests. I know that these people actually started destroying property and stuff like that. Can you tell us a little more about what happened there?
Yeah, pretty much throughout the day. The protest started around noon here in front of the APD headquarters downtown here in Albuquerque. Everything started out peaceful. There were a few bad apples in the bunch, really kind of getting in the police face and things like that, which prompted them to just show up in force. We saw riot gear, we saw tear gas, we saw, the whole nine. People were going around, doing graffiti across the central area. We have a main highway that runs through here, I-25. Protests started to move up onto I-25, basically blocking the traffic on the freeway. They brought more police presence in to move everyone off. Everyone peacefully moved off the freeway, started walking down Central, and really as it started to turn to night is when it started to get out of hand. A lot of people were, spray painting F the police on everything. There was even a police substation that was spray painted with that. And then a couple of people were showing up with guns. There were a few people showing up, with their right to bear arms, obviously. And they had AKs and riot gear, and, they were walking the streets with that stuff. And really, personally, I was scared, man. I thought the police were going to shoot one of these people for sure, just for bearing arms. Because, they killed a guy with 2 knives. Who knows what they'll do with a guy with AK-47 and riot gear,
So were these guys that came out with the rifles and the riot gear, they were standing with the protesters?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And they were marching with the protesters. Obviously, no shots were fired, luckily, Then it started to get out of hand. There were lines of riot police where there were people pulling in and revving the engines at them. Really getting violent and kind of crazy. And, I have to hand it to APD as far as handling that. I think they did all right. Really, nobody got hurt. There were a few arrests for, disorderly conduct, but I really thought it was going to be a lot worse than it was. So luckily, really not a whole lot happened other than, toward the end of the night, they did launch some tear gas to disperse the people. And that pretty much was effective. Everyone pretty much dispersed after that, but, there was definitely some graffiti and some disorderly conduct going on around the city during that time.
It was kind of funny when I saw them launch the tear gas because the wind was blowing back in their direction. I saw the video and the tear gas kind of like blew back at the cops. It didn't really blow at the protesters.
Yeah, and that's kind of how it is here, especially this time of year. We get these huge wind gusts, and really it kind of makes tear gas a little more dangerous in those sort of situations too, because you never know when the wind's going to turn and when a group of innocent people who may not have anything to do with the protests might get this tear gas in their face. And there were some accounts of that too. People that were just in the downtown area had no idea about the protests, were walking around, and all of a sudden, hey, there's tear gas at that corner, and it hurts. We need to go away.
Exactly.
And it's just, and it sucks that our city has come to this. But like I said, people who've lived here, like myself, for, their whole lives, we've known this. We've known people. We've been harassed by the police. I personally have been, I've been struck by the police. I've been beaten up by the police at, DUI checkpoint, even though, I hadn't had anything to drink, completely sober. And, I definitely don't condone drinking and driving. I think that checkpoints are all right when they're used properly. But, a guy that might have long hair or, may look a little different or may look like anti-establishment goes through one of these checkpoints. The guy doesn't like the way you look. Even if you haven't been drinking, you demand a breathalyzer, you might go through some hell. I mean, you might get beat up. You might even get shot or tased. There's been reports of people being shot dead at these checkpoints. And there's a lot of them. Pretty much every single weekend we see some of them around here somewhere because, drinking and driving is a big problem out here. But that's kind of their mentality, is like that they own the city and that it feels like they're a gang. It feels like they're the biggest gang that's running this city. And, people aren't standing up for it anymore. They're not taking it. That's
exactly what they are, is a huge gang. And for so long, like I said, and I haven't heard any news out of Albuquerque in a long time. For so long, these guys were getting away scotch-free. They were probably getting help from the media. The local media is not covering all this stuff. And what I think changed, and maybe why they showed so much restraint at the big protest on Sunday, is because that story about that homeless man that was supposedly illegally camping out there went so viral. I mean, I can't even imagine how many phone calls the police department got over that story, because that story was one of the most viral stories when it came out.
Yeah,
so
there's actually a candlelight vigil tonight for Mr. James Boyd, who lost his life.
So now
and what was the story? Because it seems to resonate a lot everywhere, where these overzealous, active citizen types who have nothing better to do than call in suspicious behavior end up getting people killed. Was it something similar to that with this guy?
Not really, no. From what I understand, I mean, nobody really called him in or anything. I guess they just kind of stumbled upon him. He was up in the foothills of our mountains here, and he was camping because he's homeless, obviously. Needed a place to crash for the day, and picked the wrong place. Pretty much wrong place, wrong time is what it all came down to. From what I understand, an initial officer came up to him, told him that, what he was doing was illegal. He decided to pull what appears in the video to be a steak knife. I mean, it's not even a real knife, and that's enough for them. That's, like I said when I was talking to that police officer, when it comes to beanbagging a guy and have him be hospitalized and coming back and suing the department later, or, shooting a guy in the back that nobody cares about, they're going to pick shooting him because guess what? That's paid days off.
And exactly, the most of these guys just get a slap on the wrist. They get paid leave. The guy out here in L.A. in Orange County that shot Kelly Thomas, another mentally ill homeless man, is now trying to sue to get his job back, and most likely he probably will get his job back. And the taxpayers are actually going to have to give that guy a settlement as well, even though he killed a guy. And the video shows that they blatantly overstepped their bounds. They just kept wailing on this guy when he was down and already detained, and they just keep wailing on this guy. And it's just a sign of the times of this creeping police state. And what we have here is basically the military-industrial complex coming home to roost. And I saw some of the pictures coming out of Albuquerque, and they definitely had a bunch of these armored cars. And can you tell me a little bit about, what goes on in your mind when you start seeing these armored cars and these militarized SWAT teams with these rifles and tear gas canister launchers and all this stuff? What goes on? What do people feel when they start seeing that kind of thing in their streets?
Martial law. I mean, that's what we think. And really the state is very pro-gun, very pro-right to bear arms, which is great. We need something to really, keep these people guessing. And I think that's kind of part of the problem as well. I'm definitely pro-gun myself. But, a lot of these cops have been shot too. They'll get into these high-speed chases with these guys. These guys will just come out shooting at them. And I think that that's kind of what's prompted the police to say, okay, you're going to shoot at us, well, we're going to shoot you first. And that's kind of the mentality that all of them, or I shouldn't say all of them, but a majority of them seem to have. And really, like, you know, the people in the poorer communities here and, you know, the people who've really dealt with these things firsthand, such as myself and, you know, other family members and things like that. I mean, when we see these things, we just think, okay, martial law is on the way. We better arm up and get ready because we're not going to, you know, this is still America, and we're not going to let them take our freedoms.
Yeah, man, and you know, that's what we need is more people to stand up. And I didn't know about these guys that were bearing arms that were joining your protests, and that itself there is pretty big. That's a rarity in America nowadays when it comes to these protests. You hardly ever see guys with guns, and that may also have been another deterrent for these cops to say, okay, we're not going to escalate this too bad because they actually have protesters there with rifles that could actually shoot back this time. You know,
when are police going to get it through to themselves that they're not protecting the people they think they are? They're actually only ensuring the status quo that keeps themselves in perpetual poverty and makes it hard for their own children to have a good life.
Yeah, and really, you know, we're just kind of hoping that the whole thing de-escalates from here. I mean, we see it at a kind of a peak point right now, and we're just kind of, you know, the protests are pretty much over other than the one that's coming up this Sunday. But, you know, like I said, they had the candlelight vigil for James Boyd today. From what I understand, it was completely peaceful. I haven't really looked into it too much. I've been working most of the day. But, yeah, from what I understand, it was completely peaceful, and they're really just we're trying to move on now and just get some type of legislation or something passed here to where we can, you know, feel safe in our communities. And really, I think the lack of presence of our mayor and our governor at this protest really showed us that they really support the police and don't care about their people. And, you know, even the comments that our mayor, Richard Berry, made after the protest, you know, saying that it was mayhem and all these things. Mayhem is, you know, killing more people than a city 16 times your size. That's mayhem in my mind.
Yeah,
and what the police are doing is insane.
It's a government-created hysteria. And then you got these people on the other side of the spectrum, these guys that are going to show up at this pro-police rally on Sunday, that, you know, they watch the evening news and they say, oh, well, yeah, well, look at this knockout game. I should be scared of my own neighbor. The cops are my friend. They're going to protect me and my money and my property. But unfortunately, too many times nowadays, people call the cops on people for something minor, and then it escalates and people end up getting shot. There was a guy not too long ago in Florida, and he was a college student, and he was driving his car, and he got into a serious accident. He wrecked into a telephone pole. He was injured. He got out of the car. He went to the nearest house to knock on the door to get some help, to tell them to call 911 to help him. And what did the person at the house do? They said, oh my God, someone's trying to break into my house. They called the cops and they said, someone's trying to break into my house. And what ended up happening? This guy that was already hurt in the car accident, innocent guy, trying to get help, ends up getting shot and killed by the cops. So, I mean, you know, at this point in time, right now where we're at, it's not really a smart thing to call the cops. Now, we have this other story about this guy, this guy whose son took his truck. And it was like a 16-year-old kid, and the dad took his truck. And according to the statements that the dad made, the dad was just trying to teach the kid a lesson by calling the cops on him. And so the dad calls the cops on the kid. The cops end up chasing the kid down in the car, and then the cops end up shooting and killing the kid. You know, I mean, it's just I guess the point which I'm trying to stress here is like, don't call the cops anymore, because when you call the cops, you can basically, there's a good chance that someone's going to get shot. And it's probably someone that you care for, someone in your family, maybe your boyfriend, your girlfriend, or who knows what, your brother pissed you off. And there's always other ways to handle things other than having to involve the government, because the government isn't very good at solving domestic issues. They're not very good at solving civil issues. We see that by the state of this country. They're not very good at solving that kind of stuff. They don't have good ideas. All they know is force. All they know is how to batter someone down down the barrel of a gun and force them to do things. You know, you know, I think the more that we can solve things at the community level, at the family level, at the peer level, and the less we have to involve the cops, the easier things will be for the rest of us. And this guy that was illegally camping, or I don't know what happened with this other guy where the video came out.
How can you be illegally camping, by the way?
Really what it is we have pretty strict fire restrictions around this time of year. Like I said, with the wind changing, we get a lot of wildfires that really threaten the city. And so a lot of times they close off these areas near our mountains and things like that to basically reduce fire danger. And so when they do that, basically it's illegal to camp in those areas. So say, for instance, James Boyd would have just been walking through those areas, hiking without the camping equipment. And say, for instance, he wouldn't have pulled the knives. But if he was just walking in that area, it would have been over and done with. They probably would have just said, leave the area, and that would have been the end of it. But the fact that he had the camping equipment and stuff, basically what they were trying to do was get him to gather all of his camping gear together and then leave. And that's when he kind of, you could see kind of in the video where they tell him, grab your stuff, goes to grab his stuff, and that's when they shoot the flashbang at him and murder him.
It's just insane.
And really it's just a senseless loss of life. And, and it's not just that. I mean, really what has these people here in Albuquerque really upset too are, the acts of torture that have come out under police interrogation, people being beaten within their lives, people being violated with foreign objects, people being, extradited when they were U.S. citizens. Things like that have been happening for years. And like I said, nobody really paid much attention to it, at least on a national level. But, now that the stuff's come out nationally, all these people who've had these feelings brewing for all these years are now finally starting to stand up and, we're trying to take our city back.
Well, we just hope that these protests get through to these guys and that some kind of common sense solutions come out of this where they can, start getting a little more accountability. Now, it's tough because, unfortunately, when the government messes up, who do you call to investigate the government? Normally, it's the government investigating the government. Yeah, it might be the FBI investigating the APD, but still, it's the government and the government, and you got that thin blue line. It's like that old saying that one bad apple can spoil the rest, and it's kind of that same mentality when it comes to these cops. And I think that's what happened with the Dorner case. I don't know if you're familiar with the Chris Dorner situation, how that went down. But basically how that all started out was when he was in training, he went and reported the cop that was training him, which was his partner. He reported her for beating up a mentally ill man when the guy was already down and detained. She kicked the guy. And he went to report this cop. And then what happened was the whole department basically turned on him. They started calling him a racist. They started calling him all these things. They started saying he was doing all this stuff. And that's what really drove him to that point where he went and snapped and did all these things. So what the other thing we have there is that all that peer pressure within these police departments where everyone's really afraid. There are obviously there's good cops in every department. And they probably have a conscience, and they probably like to blow the whistle. But if they did, you have to remember the consequence and the peer pressure and the social pressures that they're going to face whenever they try to out their own brothers and sisters in the force.
Nick, that's why we need militias to come back, because these guys can go to individual precincts and go, listen, this isn't working with this individual cop. We got other cops saying this guy's a screwball, and we want him gone. But it has to be a show of force that has teeth.
We got to come up with some kind of common sense solution. Obviously, turning the cameras back on these guys is starting to work, and I believe it's going to help in Albuquerque because now they're on the map. Now everyone knows what kind of scumbags are within some of the people within the APD, and who these people are. And hopefully maybe throughout this whole thing they can out a few of these guys, maybe 5 of them or whatever, and get some of these guys out of there. But in the current state of things, just like Kyle was saying, the worst case scenario, these guys get a paid vacation. And it's really not all that bad. I remember when I was in high school and when I got suspended, it was like vacation for me. And it's kind of the same thing that's going on here with these cops. Hey Kyle, we're coming to the end of the show here, man. Thanks for calling in. Thanks for all the info. And if
No
you have
problem.
anything else coming in, just send it to me and we'll try to report on it. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo.